The Daffodil Principle. This is adapted by me and based on others' work, as I'll share later. When I was in Ohio, after high school and before I enlisted in the Navy, my dad had called several times one summer to tell me, "Son, you must come see the daffodils before they're over." I wanted to go, but it was a 2-hour drive to see my parents, and I was busy with a lot on my plate, living on my own for the first time ever. You know how it is. "I'll come next Tuesday," I promised. A little reluctant on the third call. Next Tuesday dawned, and it was cold, it was rainy. Still, I'd promised, so I drove there. When I finally walked into their house and hugged them and greeted my family, and I said, "Dad, forget the daffodils. The road is invisible in this weather. There's nothing in the world I want to see bad enough except you, my mom, and my sister Brandy. There's nothing bad enough to drive one more inch. Nothing more important." So my dad smiled and in his knowing way, and he said, "We drive in this weather all the time." I said, "Well, I'd rather not get back on the road until this weather clears up and it's time to go home." Well, when the time came, I said, "I was hoping you could drive me over to the garage and get my car." My dad jumped up and said he'd take me and we could chat on the way. So I said my goodbyes to my mom and my sister, and we poured my sister's 2 little ones into the car, and off we headed. After several minutes, I had to ask, "Where are we going? This isn't the way to the garage." He said, "We're going to my garage, the long way, by way of the daffodils." You'll never forgive yourself if you miss this experience. After a bit, he turned, and we turned into a small gravel road, and I saw a small church. On the far side of the church, I saw a hand-lettered sign that said, "Daffodil Garden." We got out of the car and each took a child's hand and followed him down the path. Then we turned the corner of the path. I looked up and I gasped. Before me lay the most glorious sight. It looked as if someone had taken a great vat of gold and poured it down the mountain and slopes. The flowers were planted in majestic swirling patterns, great ribbons and swaths of deep orange, white, yellow, lemon, salmon, pink, saffron, and butter yellow. Each different colored variety was planted in a group such that it swirled and flowered like it was its own river with its own unique hue. There were 5 acres of flowers. "Who has done this?" I asked aloud. "It's just one woman," came the answer. "She lives on the property, and that's her home." We looked toward a small, well-kept A-frame home. It was tiny and modest in the midst of all this glory, and we walked up to the house. On the patio, we saw a poster. "Answers to questions I know you're asking," was the headline. The first answer was a simple one, 50,000 bulbs, it read. The second answer was, "One at a time, by one woman. 2 hands, 2 feet, and very little brain." And the third answer was, "Began in 1958. There it was, the Daffodil Principle. For me, that moment was a life-changing experience. The thought of this woman who had never met, I'd never seen her before, who decades ago had begun, one bulb at a time, to bring her vision to life in an obscure corner of the countryside. Still, just planting one bulb at a time. Year after year, she changed the world. This unknown woman had forever changed the world in which she lived, the world in which we live. Curated something of ineffable, indescribable magnificence. She had created something remarkable. It was beautiful, inspirational, and taught a solitary, important principle. The principle that daffodil garden taught is one of the greatest principles of celebration. That is, learning to move toward our goals and desires one step at a time. Often, just one baby step at a time. and learning to love the doing, learning the good use of accumulation of time. When we multiply tiny pieces of time with small increments of daily effort, we too can accomplish magnificent things. We can change the world. It made me sad in a way. What might I have accomplished if I thought of a wonderful goal 30 years ago and worked away at it one bulb at a time over all those years? Just think how much I might have been able to accomplish. My dad summed up the message of the day in his usual direct way. Start tomorrow. For those of you that may know, my dad passed away last year. And while this story is an adaptation, he instilled these ideas, these principles in me before his passing. Thank God for him. I thank God for that. And I thank you for listening.